In this video, we'll be completely remastering Skyrim's graphics with mods. We'll be going over everything, including enhancing our landscapes, towns and cities, and NPCs. So let's not waste any more time and start with overhauling Skyrim's graphics, starting with the ground we walk on. To update the graphics on my landscape textures, I use Skirk Rose Retexture Project, or SRP as it's called. This mod completely redoes literally everything, from the dirt, sand, ice, grass, to even the soul cairn and solstice. It's available in up to 4K, and even comes with parallax meshes, which gives the ground a 3D effect rather than just being flat. These textures are excellently crafted and feature realistic details and colours, certainly making the game's environment more next generation looking. Now, to enhance the mountains that make Skyrim, I use Nordic Mountains by Mysterious Dawn. This mod offers a complete texture upgrade while staying true to the vanilla look in terms of colouring and brightness. The mod even has its own parallax meshes to make the mountains even more detailed and textured looking. So now that we changed our ground textures, the next layer to tackle is the flora, starting with QW's Grass Patch 2. This mod combines the grasses from 3 other mods to create an extremely rich and diverse ground cover. With this mod installed, you can expect to see a variety of new grass types, including taller grasses and wildflowers. Now keep in mind, this mod is on the heavier side performance wise, and it does steer Skyrim towards a more fantastical aesthetic, but if you're anything like me, that's a trade-off you're willing to make for visual fidelity. On top of the new grasses, to make our forests look even better, I use the Forest Debris Only module from Nature of the Wildlands. This mod adds and changes the pieces of forest debris, like the tree logs, stumps and broken branches on the ground within the forests. And to overhaul the trees themselves, I use Happy Little Trees. This mod replaces Skyrim's trees with high quality new versions. What's great about this mod is that it keeps the performance cost low while significantly boosting the visual appeal. These trees not only blend seamlessly into the environment, but also come with improved animations for windy conditions. The snowy trees alone are absolutely stunning, and should be reason enough alone to install this mod. Now let's start by overhauling Skyrim's underground with new textures for our caves. To remaster the caves, I use Mysterious Dawn's Parallax Caves, which just significantly improves the cave textures. For the icy caves in specific, I use Skyrim Remastered Caves. As this mod does more than a mere texture update, it also introduces a 3D effect to the ice surfaces, making the ice look very real. As for the Dwemer ruins, I use Clever Char's Retexture, which not only covers all the ruins in the game, but also transforms the city of Markarth's textures. For something a little more specific, I use Dwemer Pipework Reworked. This mod transforms what were previously flat, fake exhaust holes into real transparent ones. Moreover, it adds animated fans and slightly increased glossiness to the metal, which just helps the Dwemer ruins to look far more interesting. And moving on from the Dwemer ruins to the Nordic ruins, Rudi's Nordic ruins does wonders in terms of a texture overhaul. No part of the ruins is left untouched, resulting in a complete and visually striking transformation. The stones now look worn, and the murals now look more detailed, making for the perfect overhaul. Finally, before we get to the cities, let's talk about something you see all throughout Skyrim, the water. To overhaul the water, I use Water for ENB. This is an all-encompassing mod that changes everything, from the water's surface texture to its movement dynamics. It adds new effects, making the water not only look better, but also feel more realistic. You'll notice improved ripples, reflections, and even water flow changes that make the rivers and lakes far more realistic. Okay, now for the big cities. Since we've already covered Markarth with Clever Char's retexture, let's start by overhauling Whiterun. Whiterun is a bustling hub, and it deserves to look the part. That's why I use Illustrious Whiterun. This mod completely overhauls the city's textures, giving the town a darker, more regal appearance. And to accentuate the new textures, I pair it with Impoverished Whiterun. This mod changes the flooring in the lower district, making it look dirtier, and adding wooden planks, which I think helps to create a visual contrast between the districts, making them feel more distinct while retaining the rich textures of the upper levels. To cover the rest of the towns, I use the Architecture module from Skyrim 2020. This mod tackles everything from the College of Winterhold to Solitude, and even extends its reach to places like Fort Dawnguard and Castle Volkihar. This mod also covers smaller features by adding new textures for forts, farmhouses and smaller settlements. Basically, if it's built by hand in Skyrim, this mod enhances it. Now let's look at the weather and lighting, probably the most important aspect of any modded Skyrim setup. For my ENB and Weathers, I use Natural Atmospheric Tamriel paired with Rudy ENB. I think this combo is nearly unparalleled for how good it looks. The clear skies are blue, and the dark storms are gloomy. You'll even see new weather types like ash and embers raining from the sky in Solstheim. It's the perfect blend of fantastical and realistic. For the lighting inside our buildings, I use the best interior lighting mod on the Nexus, Lux, which completely reworks the vanilla lighting. The mod author has meticulously rebuilt and hand-placed lights throughout the interior spaces to create a dynamic yet balanced lighting scheme. What's best is that Rudy ENB was designed with Lux in mind, so you can expect consistent and great looking interiors all throughout Skyrim. Now before we move on to some of the major overhauls, let's hone in on some smaller elements with 2 mods, starting with the Static Mesh Improvement mod. Now I won't dwell on it for too long, as I'm sure most of you have heard of it. Essentially, this mod replaces many of the architectural features and smaller objects with high quality new textures. For instance, the ropes on the Riften docks are no longer 2D, and now you can say goodbye to those low res skeletons in Nordic ruins that look like they were ripped from a PS2 game. Next on our list is a High Poly project, another mod that zeroes in on the finer details. Similar to the Static Mesh Improvement mod, it takes ordinary objects that you might usually overlook, like firewood and sacks, and enhances them with high poly new textures. With this mod installed, even the most mundane items receive a next-gen makeover, so even the smallest items fit into your new graphically enhanced Skyrim. Okay, now we can move on to the fun stuff, the larger overhauls, like the new completely redesigned buildings and towns. The goal of this segment is to make each of the new settlements feel truly unique, rather than just copy-pasted farmhouses that make up the seemingly rushed minor towns and villages. To start off this section, let's start with one of the more overlooked towns and turn our sights to Dragonbridge. Roderick's Dragonbridge injects new life into the small town by replacing its generic farmhouses with unique, solitude-inspired rustic architecture. Both the interiors and exteriors of each building have been entirely redesigned to elevate the town's aesthetic. What I can also appreciate about this mod is its restraint. It doesn't add any new NPCs or buildings. Its goal is to solely enhance what's already there. Now let's talk about 2 of the other minor towns, being Shorstone and Karthwasten. For these, I go with mods from the Great City series. Starting with the great town of Karthwasten, this mod revamps the town into a thriving local hub. Gone are the old farmhouses, instead we have new buildings inspired by Breton architecture that still maintain the rugged essence of the Reach. For Shorstone, the great town of Shorstone expands the area with the new centrepiece, Fallowstone Hall, which used to serve as the hub for the Companions of the Rift. And not only do we get high quality new meshes for the existing structures, but also an entirely new inn, expanded farmland, and a hall that pays homage to the god Shor. For Ivarstead, I used the newly released Thal'Dor's Ivarstead. This mod turns what used to be a sparse village, comprising of just a couple farmhouses, a mill and an inn. Now Ivarstead features a town square, chapel, cemetery, and even a guard tower, really renovating this previously mundane village. Continuing on with our town and city overhauls, let's dive into the Cities of the North series. These mods individually revamp Dawnstar, Morthal and Falkreath, emphasizing their unique characteristics and identities. And no more do these towns look exactly the same as each other. Each town now features uniquely crafted buildings that deeply root themselves in Skyrim's Nordic aesthetic. In Dawnstar, you can prepare to see robust and towering Nordic homes, designed to withstand the harsh winters. Over in Morthal, you'll find cozy, inviting homes that I think provide a sense of warmth and safety. In both towns, the interiors have been completely remodeled to seamlessly blend with their newly designed exteriors. Now Falkreath takes this overhaul to the next level. While the structure of Dawnstar and Morthal is generally maintained, Falkreath undergoes a complete transformation. The town centre now boasts a majestic tree that serves as a new focal point, and the Jarl's Hall has been moved to a more commanding position atop a hill. Especially for Winterhold, I opt for the great city of Winterhold. If you felt let down the first time you visited Winterhold, thinking it was nothing more than a lackluster village, you're not alone. Historically, Winterhold was once a grand city that served as the capital of Skyrim, but faced a calamitous event known as the Great Collapse, leading to its current diminished state. This mod pays homage to that history by adding the missing ruins and making Winterhold feel like it truly could have been Skyrim's capital. Now that we've completely transformed Skyrim's cities and landscapes, let's turn our attention to something equally as important but often overlooked: equipping our character with visually stunning armors and weapons. I used to use Amidian-Born's retextures, which I think stood as the best on the Nexus, until I started using Zab bios. So what makes Zab bios better? Well, besides the exceptional quality, they also cover the Creation Club armor sets, which are often neglected by other modders. So for a more comprehensive armor retexture mod, Zab bios are the way to go. However, for iron armor specifically, I don't think there's any beating Iconic Death's retexture. This mod gives the armor a reflective textured appearance that makes it look like real, well-maintained iron. Now let's move on to clothing. For the clothing, I still use Rustic clothing, as it's still the best in the Nexus on my opinion, as it makes the clothes and fur armor look a lot better. However, I now overwrite Rustic clothing with Traveller Clothing Redraw. This one focuses on some of the more unique pieces like vampire clothes, red guard attire, and the cultist robes. I don't think these textures are necessarily better than rustic clothings, but they offer a different, more unique take on some of these well-worn outfits. To give the NPCs a makeover, I use a combination of mods. For the skin textures of both the men and women, I use Bits and Pieces skin with its race-based textures add-on. Bits and Pieces provides a complete overhaul of the skin textures, making for a great improvement in my opinion. And the race-based textures add-on makes it so that each race gets their own unique textures. For instance, orcs are now more muscular, dark elves are skinnier and slightly bony, and red guards now look very athletic. Moving on to the hair, I still use Vanilla Hair Remake. This one not only improves the hair meshes, but also adds physics to the hairs. This means that when you move around, the hair will sway and move with you. Some people might find this a bit over the top, but personally I really enjoy it. To improve the facial hair, including both the eyebrows and beards, I use the aptly titled facial hair. This mod isn't actually available on the Nexus, though you can still find it linked in the description. The mod is extremely high quality, and I think it matches really well with the Bits and Pieces skin. Now to overhaul the look of the NPCs, I use Nordic faces. This mod aims to retain the original rugged aesthetic of Skyrim's populace, but just tweaks their appearance so they're slightly more eye-pleasing. So you won't see any outlandish hairstyles that don't fit within Skyrim's aesthetic. But for follower NPCs in particular, I use Tragedian's Fabulous Followers. The goal of the mod is to accentuate each follower in a way that stays true to the game's original tone. The mod not only revamps their appearance, but also enhances their combat abilities by adding new perks, abilities and equipment. Though if you prefer to keep the combat vanilla, these features can be toggled off during installation. And that about covers everything graphically. Keep in mind that these were just the heavy hitters. My graphics mod list is over 300 mods. Over on my Patreon, I put up an in-depth and straight to the point guide intended for new and intermediate modders on how to install this list and make your game look exactly like mine. Thanks for watching.